Hi guys, it is a gorgeous Friday evening here in paradise in the Hollywood Hills in Los Angeles, California here on Friday nights. I think it's still June 23rd, 2017, but we're actually in Idaho tonight, and I am very thrilled to announce that with the latest Humpty Dumpty Tribe interview is with a woman I have to admit I had never heard of till a couple of weeks ago, and she made a comment or two that we shared for the comment of the day. I can't even remember what it was about, but her answer was so good that a lot of tribes members have said they want to know more about Ms. Laura Marin Angeli. So I don't know much about Laura Marin Angeli, except she's an excellent writer. She is clearly not a clueless moron, and so I thought that it would be a fine thing to find out a little more about our fellow tribes member, to get some of her thoughts on the state of the planet and what we're going to do about the state of the planet. And with that, that's pretty much my introduction, Laura. So why don't you come on and say hi to the folks and just give us a brief bio of yourself, and then we'll go from there. Welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, Hambone. I guess about the best I can say is I just been kind of an out of the box thinker for most of my life. I'm just turned 62 and was on the outer edges of the hippie movement back in the mid 60s, and grew up in a lot of nice places like Lake Tahoe and parts of the Cascades in Oregon and the Sawtooth Mountains of Idaho. And in doing that, I developed an interest in the natural world, how things work. I was a professional artist for most of my adult life, and I retired from that about, 15 years ago, and my last job being as a production assistant for a local newspaper. So basically, I've had an interest in the arts and sciences all of my life, and as an artist, it's important that you develop good skills of observation, and in the sciences, the same holds true. So pretty much I've been monitoring what's been going on in our world for the last 50 years.
50 years. So
yeah.
have you... So I believe that you wrote me that you might describe yourself as a self-taught naturalist.
Right, that is correct. I'm self-educated, and although I absorbed as much as possible in my education, while I was in school, and then I was never afraid of the library once I got out of school, and so whatever I had an interest in, I would get a book and check it out and find out, as much as I could. But a lot of what goes on in nature is best understood through direct observation, in my opinion.
So it sounds like you spent some time in Idaho, up in the Frank Church and the Sawtooths. How long have you been in Idaho directly observing the situation up there?
Well, I moved up there the first time around in 1971. And,
wow, okay.
That's when I first started hanging out in the wilds of Idaho, and they truly were. And they still pretty much are till summer hits and the tourists arrive, but, that's just how that is.
So you're living there now and plan to be there from here on out?
Yep. I came back here 20 years ago, and I don't live up in the Sawtooths. I haven't lived up there since the late 70s, but I live an hour south of them, and I was just up in them on Tuesday. Went up and spent a wonderful day. It was just, it was beautiful. It's a good day. Unlike your experience, where were you on Tuesday? Were you?
I was melting into a.
And all kinds of traffic or something. I don't know. You were driving to L.A.?
Yes, I was. I was driving to L.A., baby.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so we try and get up to the Sawtooth as often as we can, but there's a lot more to Idaho than the Sawtooth. They are magnificently beautiful, but unfortunately that beauty attracts a lot of people in the summer, and as it turns out, the big eclipse in August it passes directly over Stanley, so it's going to be Stanley's the little town that serves the Sawtooth Valley. It's going to be crazy up there. They're expecting 40,000 people.
30 or 40,000.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure I'm not there.
Yeah,
I'll be on my Bigfoot hunt then anyway. So, but you're right. But one thing that I know a lot of people, including myself, are searching for is where to quote ride out the storm. So you have chosen. So you think you've dug your heels into Idaho to ride out whatever the storm is going to look like coming in the next few years.
Yeah, I'd have to say that's a credible assessment. I'm disappointed to discover that there is going to be no safe place to ride anything out. It's it's just all crashing. I'm watching the environment up here crash all around me. I mean, the things I've seen happen up in the Sawtooth National Forest is just tragic. It's beyond tragic. The forest has changed so drastically in the last 40 years that it's gut-wrenching.
Are you talking more natural? Well, when I say natural, are you talking political things like shooting wolves and clear-cutting forest, or are you talking more natural processes?
Natural processes for the most part.
And I put quotes around the word natural. You know
natural,
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But trees dying versus trees being clear cut. You know what the difference I'm referring to.
Now there was a healthy logging industry in the forests of Idaho, and our current governor is encouraging it again, but that really has to do with the vast number or percentage of forest that has died, and we have a massive amount of standing dead in the
beetles.
Beetle kill, probably. I would also say that I would primarily say that the trees have been weakened by pollutants that have entered the soil and changed the pH. There's, if you, just let's just say the air traffic alone, the pollutants that they like having up there from thank you to 9/11 and the 2-degree cooling that we experienced, for the week or however long it was that we didn't have air traffic, and they went, oh, look at that, it's so much cooler for a few days here. So we better make sure we get plenty of stuff out there in the stratosphere to continue to cool this berg. So at any rate, I'd just say that it's changes to the ecosystem in terms of there's a lot of different factors. More intense UVs, and that we experienced that up there on Tuesday. It was a sunny day with some clouds, and thank God for the clouds, because when the sun came out, it was rocking hot. And at 7,000 foot elevation, it should not have been that burning on the skin.
You're not the first person who's been saying this, and I'm hearing this more and more just the past year. And I tell you, I've never had my. I'm serious. I mean, I am not hyperbolizing. Last week, I got my ass kicked in New Mexico. I mean, I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. 23 years I spent in Atlanta, Georgia, where all summer, it's 98 degrees and 90% humidity. And I have never, I mean, the sun just, I mean, it was beating me down, but I mean, before noon each day. And I literally just had to get out. I mean, I was getting my ass kicked. And it just seems different to me. Maybe I'm getting old. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old.
No, you're not. You're not. The UVs are way higher than they're not. I don't know if you've noticed or not. I don't know how much you monitor the weather as far as the mainstream media, like the Weather Channel or any of that. But they don't even talk about it anymore. They used to give you the UV rating on a daily basis on the local news. On the weather, and they don't even mention the UV.
No, they were calling the UV level in East Bumblefuck last week 0.
Yeah,
0. I mean, it was. I put a picture of my thermometer. Outside in the sun, it was 118, and on the shady porch, it was 102 in the deep shade. So you average those out. What's that, 109, 110 degrees?
Yeah.
And you turn on and you go and you look up East Bumblefuck, New Mexico, and it said UV rating 0. The rose bushes were curling up, and just,
exactly. So, and this is the thing. I really admire the garden that you have in East Bumblefuck, and
it seems to be doing good. It's all drip irrigation as long as it gets water to it.
Yeah, but it seems like you're doing pretty good with it. But most of the people I know have been really struggling to have a healthy garden anymore. If it's in direct sun, forget about it. I mean, up here, I'm at 5,200 foot elevation.
That's exactly
where I live.
That's exactly what East Bumblefuck is 52.
Is it?
A mile high, exactly a mile high.
Yeah, and so it's been a real struggle to keep a credible garden going over the last several years, and been getting worse each year. And then the tree die-off in my little town. I live in a town of about 1,200 people, and it's pretty tragic to. There's trees having to be cut down constantly, and more dying every time. Every time one big tree goes, then the trees behind it get exposed to get that southern exposure, and then they go, and it's like an endless cycle. So, and then the south-facing street signs, like stop signs and yield signs, they're white. They've just been bleached completely away. If you didn't know what it said, you wouldn't know what it said.
And you don't think that was happening 10 years ago?
No, not 10 years. Well, I would say I kind of started noticing it about the same time as Fukushima. So I don't really think it has to do with Fukushima itself, but that's about the time I started noticing things changing in terms of the health of the trees and the gardens and everything else. And in the interim, I've had some pretty weird things happening in my yard. Like, for instance, I have a little clover patch on the lawn that's about a yard square, I would say, and it's one of many. But this is the only one that has an incredibly high percentage of four-leaf clovers. Unfortunately, it's not just four-leaf clovers. It's four-leaf, five-leaf, six-leaf, and we're talking. I had to mow. I didn't want to mow them down. I felt guilty about it because I'm going, oh, how lucky could I be? All these four-leaf clovers. But anyway, so I kind of nurtured them as long as I could, and then I had to bite the bullet and mow the lawn there, and so I picked as many as I could, and I realized I couldn't pick them all. I quit about 200.
Wow.
When you're picking 200 four-leaf clovers there's some genetic mutation going on there.
Point here. Well, let's.
And I have other flowers and plants that have mutated in a similar fashion, and I think that I know that UVs do cause genetic damage, and then maybe if you combine that with whatever is drifting over here from Fukushima, who knows?
It's such a toxic stew now. That's what trying to isolate just these individual ingredients without looking at all these synergies and all of this stuff. There's no way to disentangle disentangle this mess anymore. And every day they're dumping more of this crap onto us.
There's more and more, and it's more of this and more of that, and it just comes from every direction. It's not just this or that or the other. It's this, that, and the other, and everything else, and more to come. And in my opinion, it all boils down to big business. The military-industrial complex, whatever you want to call it. The deep state. It doesn't really matter what you call it. It's all about money and more. The people who are at the top of the food chain are shredding this planet with no regard, and the toxic stew that we're all simmering in is so far out of control that where do you start? Where do you try and educate someone who's clueless, who's never even looked at it, who goes about their day, just happy to pay their bills or just wanting to make more money or whatever, It's kind of it's a pretty.
So where are we on the trajectory? I always and people think I'm joking when every day I say it's a beautiful day in the end times. I literally believe that if we've been a species for 200,000 years, even if we have 1,000 years left, which we don't, that means we're 99.5% of the way to the end. That's if you're on a 200-mile trip and you have 199 miles behind you, you can tell your kid we're almost there. I consider that we're almost there, whether it's 5 years, 50, or 500 at this point.
Right.
We are in the end times. Do you agree with that or?
Oh, absolutely. And how one defines the end times, whether you define it as the Anthropocene or whether you look at it in terms of what's going to remain after we're gone, because that's what it's going to take is us getting our butts out of here, or else some type of a massive change in understanding. I don't see that happening. I don't see all of humanity coming together to understand, not even a little. And it breaks my heart, but what can I do other than try and tell anyone who will listen and hope that people, are on the same page I'm on. But, I'm on a pretty radical page when it comes to that, because in my book, I would dispense with money, period. That money exchange, all of that. How many species out there besides humans have a bank account?
And of course, for the first... Well, if we've been here 200,000, so for 190,000 years, we somehow did it. Now, of course, it was with a population of
500 million or less.
Yes, I wasn't going to.
That's the big end of it. 300 to 500 million tends to be what the Earth supports in terms of humans, sans technology. but I believe that technology changed all of that and allowed this population explosion.
Of course, and then especially when you bring fossil fuels into it. I mean, when you put the invention of fossil fuels up against the hockey stick of the human population, I mean,
exactly.
They're right directly on top of each other. The planet, there's one reason there's 7.5 billion people. Well, it's not just one, but the fossil fuels is the big one. It's the big one. It's antibiotics and it's nitrogen fertilizer are the other two.
Oh yeah.
Those are the and maybe vaccines, but we won't get into that discussion.
Either, yeah.
But modern medicine, fossil fuels, and people tend to forget the nitrogen fertilizer. How important that one was too.
And getting back to what woke me up, that was the nitrogen, because I had the great fortune to spend my latter childhood. I moved up to Tahoe, when I was 7, but prior to that, I was born in the San Joaquin Valley, and I'm a product of agricultural people. My grandparents who raised me were fruit tramps. I don't know if you know what that is or not, but I'm all too well aware of the whole nitrogen fertilizer, the green revolution as it used to be called. Now the green revolution is the green economy, and it's a whole different deal. But at any rate, there's a lot of factors, and they've been going on for a very long time. One of the things about my schooling at Tahoe was in about 1960, I'd say 69. I was 14. There was an issue of eutrophication in the lake, which is the production of algae because of oxygen, being delivered to the lake. Well, what was happening was there was a lot of pollutants. Being a basin like Tahoe is, there was so much traffic coming up in the summers and in the winters because of the ski resort, and all the pollution would land in the snow, of course, because it couldn't get out. Lots of times there'd be inversions, and what was happening was that ultimately all ended up in the lake, as were all the various sewers that were associated with the various small towns around the lake. So in 1969, there was a big movement to address that, and my history teacher was a big part of that, and so consequently, so were his students, myself included, and that's when I first started understanding the relationships and how things are impacted. When you're talking a lake that at that point in time was considered to be 90% pure, now it's down to like 75, I think. But
which is still pretty amazing, I think, in 2017.
It is, but when I look at that lake and the clarity of it compared to the lake I knew,
of course,
it freaks me out. But at any rate, long story short, that's what launched me on my pursuit of understanding the relationships that are within nature and that are the repercussions of our behavior. The things we do, the choices we make.
But the conversation that I notice since I got down this rabbit hole myself about 8 years is that it used to be back when I was what I called a limp dick mainstream environmentalist. It was things, and I'm still cheering people on, like save the redwoods, save Tahoe, these local environmental groups, and they're all well and good, and I'm not knocking those, but man, the more I back the camera back, and it's bigger than Tahoe, it's bigger than the redwoods, it's bigger than Frank Church Wilderness. We're fucked.
It's big picture. It's the big picture.
I mean, this has gone planet-wide. There's nowhere left to run. That's why Stephen
That's
Hawking and all those guys are saying we got to run to Mars. That it's easier,
yeah.
and I think he believes it. That it might be true that it's easier for humans to colonize to make Mars habitable than to try to save our own damn planet. And it's just the fact that in the mainstream media seems to be cheering this new Mars meme on. Let's just colonize Mars and just bail on this planet's fucked. And it's right there, at least in between the lines. Although Stephen Hawking is no longer, he's brought it and put it right out there in the open. That this planet is toast.
Center with it.
Yeah.
The way I look at it, and this is my companion and I had a conversation about it last night, and at this point in time, as far as I know, anybody that's considering Mars, if you were to go to Mars, the UV there would burn you to a crisp. I mean, it's just not habitable. So I'm saying, right on, you guys, get your butts out of here. Go to Mars. Go today.
Yeah, I would. There's several people I would like to send to Mars. It's the best place for them. But on one hand, they're sounding more eco-Nazi than anybody else. So what do you see at this point? I mean, just from obviously you've been looking at this for 50 years, which is a lot longer than I've been looking at it. Where are we as a planet on the we are so fucked scale? I mean, are we going to pull out of this at this point?
Up until the last 3 years here in my region, we've had below normal precipitation for the winters. This past winter kicked butt. I mean, my companion has lived in this house for 40 years. He's never seen anything like it. We had snow all the way. I have a big picture window that's 8 feet high. We couldn't see out the window. We had snow all the way up to the eaves. I can't tell you how much time I spent shoveling and dragging snow off of the roof, and just trying to keep things from crashing and burning. So then what happened was, in spite of and I know there's chemicals in the snow because of the burning on my skin that happens, and the arthritis. My arthritis gets really bad when I have to go out there and be in it. I have rheumatoid arthritis in my hands now, which is why I can't do art anymore, because I can't hold a pencil or my tools anymore. I can use a camera a bit. So I know that there's stuff in the snow, but regardless of that, there was so much moisture that came down, and we got a huge recharge into our the top layers of soil and shrubs that I thought I was going to lose forever. Like, I've got these two currant bushes that have been. This house where I live has been it's been here for over 100 years. It's one of the original landowners. And so I got these two currant bushes over in the corner that are probably 75 years old, and they're huge. And I was watching them crash and burn, and I was just mourning, for them, because I loved them so much. They hosted these wonderful sparrows every year, and I thought they were toast, and they're back. They came back. So I have hope that if we can just stop the insanity, the industrial insanity of just despoiling everything, that life will regenerate, that it can recuperate. Now, I don't see hope for humanity, not because we couldn't, but because we won't.
Yeah. It's. I mean, for every step forward, I see one step forward and not 2 steps back. I see 10 steps back, and it's.
And as the population increases, and it's just increasing at a ridiculous rate. I mean, we're doubling. It's one thing to double your population in 40 years when the global population is 500 million. But when you're doubling 7 billion in 40 years, or hello, this is hopeless, and I see YouTube videos, like there's this one video, call me an idiot, but sometimes I just have to watch the dumbest stuff. And there's this one about this mom with quadruplets, and it was funny to watch her changing all these babies. But I'm sitting there going, what in the hell what are you thinking? You bring in, they're just popping them out like popcorn. It's ridiculous, and I have one child. Her father passed away 20 years ago, and over 20 years ago. And so, we're kind of hanging in there at a negative population growth. She has absolutely no intention whatsoever. She's 37. She has no intention whatsoever of having children.
Oh.
And she's with a man who has had a vasectomy. My companion has had a vasectomy.
All right.
That ain't in the cards. But on the other hand, I got, I lost my brother about 10 years ago, and his kids, he had 3. I had 1, he had 3. 2 of his 3 between them have 10. It's like, oh my God. Yeah, it's like and they think I'm an idiot. They think I'm just crazy. That they don't want to hear anything I have to say. They all think I'm just out of my mind in terms of what's coming down the pike at us, and so I just
so your family doesn't want to hear it.
Oh, not whatsoever. I've always been the outside egg, though. They've always ridden my butt about my environmental views. They've always, been on the other side of that fence. And all I can do is wait.
Is there anybody in your real life that you can that you can personally can sit down and talk about, have this conversation you and I are having? Is there anybody in your real life that you can sit down and have this conversation with for more than 5 minutes before they change the subject?
Nope. And and my companion, bless his heart, he has to listen to it on a daily basis, and he can only deal with it for so long. But he does get it. He understands, and he sees it, and he knows, because he was out hunting in these mountains, bringing down deer and all of that, and he quit. One year, I don't know, probably 30 years ago, he quit hunting because he said, I got all I needed to get. I got my good elk, I got my good deer, why do I want to keep doing that? He goes out and fishes occasionally, but other than that, he understands. He sees the changes. He doesn't want to think about them, and he gets tired of me ragging about it, but, it is what it is, and I just ain't going to quit talking about it. And whoever will listen is going to hear. But it's incredible how many people do not want to hear.
No, I don't have it. That's why I created this channel, because I have nobody in my life to talk about this with. Nobody.
And that's exactly why I did my YouTube channel and why I created my blog at Marin Angelio, is that I have to say it. I can't not talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. People are always saying, Hambun, you're preaching to the choir. There's not a damn thing you're saying that we don't already know. And I said, well, at least we need more preachers. And it's just like, I just think it's an interesting subject. The collapse of a planet, the collapse of a global society, a civilization, a species, and a planet. I just think that's more interesting than what Kim Kardashian is having for dinner tonight. Kim lives about a mile from where I'm staying, by the way.
Oh my God!
But apparently, 99 point, what is it, 90, someone figured it out, 99.86% of the planet has no interest in the subjects that we talk about on this channel. They don't, it's not even so much that they're in denial. To deny something, you have to be aware of it. They're just completely unaware of the situation.
Completely. And it's astounding to me, because I don't understand, especially in my area, where people, live here because of it being a resort. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of Sun Valley or not.
Oh yeah.
That's where I live, and it's a beautiful place, and it draws people from everywhere, and unfortunately, the man that created it, Averell Harriman, is part and parcel of the industrial monster that's been consuming this world. And in fact, in July, when I'm going to escape a little further north to yet another teeny town called Chalice, where there's a wonderful hot springs, and we can get away. During that week, there's this thing called Allen and Company, where it's called the Billionaires Club, and my little airport. And I'm not shitting you. You can look it up. You'll find it'll raise your hair. Okay. So my little town, Bellevue, is 1,100 people, 1,200 people. The next town up, about 3 miles north of me, is Haley, and it's about 6,000 people. And then you got Sun Valley and Ketchum, and between them, they're probably about 3,000. So we're talking about, overall valley population of, including outlying areas, probably at best 20,000, at best. However, our little airport, Friedman Memorial Airport, when Allen and Company comes to town in the first week of July-ish, there will be as many as 50 corporate jets sitting there, and we're not talking little jets. We're talking the big boys.
I can imagine.
The full-on big boys. I mean, Bill Gates comes up here, all of them. They all come up here. I ran into him one time at a...
Oh, really? If you ran into Uncle Billy?
Yeah.
With your car
Bruce Willis. Oh, no. Well, Bruce Willis had a club. He still has it. He's been trying to sell it for years. In Haley, called the Mint, and so he get good bands in there because he could, and he plays.
There's some benefit to having a billionaire show up. They bring good musicians with them.
Well, yeah, but at any rate, so I went up to see. Let's see who was playing. Marshall Tucker.
All right.
And we're talking about a club that can hold about 200 people. Yeah. It's not a big place. It's pretty cozy. And I was getting ready to leave, and there was Bill Gates standing there smoking his cigar, and he had a couple of groupies with him, and he was just standing there drinking and smoking a cigar, and his two groupies, these two guys were standing there dancing to him, like they were dancing at him.
Yeah.
It was so weird. So I went over to him, and I had a little conversation with him. I asked him, I go, so you enjoying your time up here? And he goes, oh yeah, I went on a river trip, and he acted like he wasn't who he was, but he figured it was dark enough I couldn't tell, but it was plainly obvious. So anyway, and that. It's ridiculous who comes up here, and it's all those evil bastards, the ones who are killing our planet, getting rich, killing our planet, while we all support their reality.
We're the ones that keep them in power. I'm always quoting Atlas Shrugged. My number one favorite quote in that whole book: "Stop buying our products." Is that the Planet Eater talking right there, looking right at the little lefty whatever, saying, if you want to put us out of business, there's one way to do it: stop buying our products. But they know damn well we're not going to stop buying their products.
Yeah. Well, I divested myself from that a long time ago. I came to the conclusion that I could not support any more of it than I absolutely had to. And, there's no way to divest yourself completely. If you're going to drive a vehicle, you're going to be part of it. But I chose a lifestyle that would allow me to make money without having to, be a part of that whole thing. And I chose the secondary market. That's why I'm involved in antiques and vintage clothing, and I haven't purchased any new clothing for myself in I don't know, probably 30 years.
All right. I've made
Other
it 8
than,
years. I haven't in 8 years.
you know, I learned, I was raised by an antique dealer, and so I learned, she was dragging me around when I was 2 years old to thrift stores and flea markets, and I learned early how to do that, you know, how to and because I have had a career in art, I have a good eye, you know, I can see stuff that people have let go. I know what I'm looking at, and I know when to buy something, and you know, so I'm able to escape the typical conundrum that most people are caught up in. But I'm one of the fortunate few. You know, I made that decision a long time ago.
But most people, as you know damn well, are the vast majority of people on this planet are making the opposite choice.
Exactly. And, you know, it's not like I haven't been ringing this bell for a really long time. I have. I've been telling people, and they just ignore me. I mean, I had a friend who, back in the mid-'80s, about 1983, oh my God, he was so into Roundup. It was like, dude, you really shouldn't be spraying that shit everywhere. He goes, ow, don't worry about it. It's just nitrogen. It ain't going to hurt you. And they, you know, basically laughed me out of the room. Well, a year later, he comes up with, he goes to his doctor, and his doctor discovers this big cluster of tumors on his testicles. And, you know, it's like, hello, do you remember
again? You know, it's like trying to. Okay, was it the Roundup? You know what? Blah blah blah, and you get into that whole thing. Yeah. And that's why I say it's the whole goddamn mess, people. We're being hit from every possible angle, and we're going to be being hit by more of this crap tomorrow than we are today. And that's why I'm walking around with my "We Are So Fucked" sign.
And they won't quit, and watch the TV, and you're going to see, you know, just them shoving it down your throat, whether, you know, and making you like it. You know, it's the whole. You know, I spent enough. The only job. You know, I've had a lot of different jobs over the years. Primarily, I was an artist, but you know, I have done a lot of different things, and I never did anything for very long other than art. And so the last job I held was 4 years at the newspaper, and I really got my eyes opened up there in terms of how much bullshit is put out for people to consume in terms of the press, you know.
Well, I was a newspaper reporter and editor for 7 years, but
okay.
So I was in the middle of that too. So what is your prognosis? I mean, that's your advice individually. It's just stay out of the line of fire and lower your footprint the best you can. But on a humanity-wide collective scale, are we going to get our shit together in time to turn this train wreck around, or are we heading in for what is your view of what we're heading into?
Well, if I was going to take a dose of hopium, I would say I hope. But the realist in me says not very likely.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart because, you know, I got friends who have babies, and you know, I have my daughter who's, you know, 37. I mean, shoot, she deserves a future. But, you know, and what am I going to do? Go, okay, Becca, forget about it. You know, you're going to be done in about 10 or 20 years. And you know, that's what drives me crazy about the news is, you know, this, or Trump or whatever, you know, the whole, oh, well, by 2050 we'll be blah, blah, blah. Well, 2050 my ass. There ain't no 2050, you know. I was hoping to make it to 100. That would require 2055. So I guess I'm out of luck on that one. You know, it's ridiculous how clueless everyone is, and voluntarily so. I mean, they choose that path. They don't want to know. They don't want to look at it. They don't want to believe it's really finally here, but it really is finally here. I mean, too much is happening. I do believe it could change. I mean, it's physically possible in the natural world and in humanity's world too, but it's just we're, as a species, we don't seem to have the capacity to all get on the same page, and that being the page of altruism. I mean, people actually think altruists are dummies or something. They don't have respect for them. I had a guy, I was talking about it to some guy at a violin shop in Boise a few years back. I was venting a little bit about, how screwed up everything is, and he goes, and I go, if people would just, all get on the same page and look at what's going on and all work together, and he goes, well, that's just utopia. Like it was some terrible thing, Oh, well, excuse me for
suggesting utopia.
Yeah.
Well,
like,
you know me. I see dystopia, but
that's what it is. That's where we're at. That's where we're headed, and I just don't see this train not ending up at that station.
So between now and the brick wall, just do what you can to stay out of the line of fire. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Well, the page I live on is do your best to not add to the problem.
Yeah.
Do your best to wake up anyone who's willing to listen, and prepare for the shitstorm that's coming. That's
all right. Well, that's as good of advice as I have ever come up with in 7 years of doing this and almost 4,000 videos. That's kind of the best advice that I can come up with. Anyway, I see good Lord, we are 47 minutes into this, and I could easily go another 47 minutes, but I think let's just throw it out there. Anything, if you wanna put your message into 90 seconds, what would you, if you had a 90-second soundbite on the mainstream media instead of 47 minutes on Humpty Dumpty Tribe, give us your 90-second soundbite to the world.
Well, I don't think it'd take 90 seconds. Pretty much, it's do no harm, do the best you can, and try and understand the big picture. Just try and be honest and real, and look at the big picture. Digest it as best you can, and just do what's best for everybody.
There you go. Okay, fine piece of parting advice from Laura. Let me get this right. Marin Angeli?
That was close. That's not bad. A lifetime of hearing people try and say that.
Marin Angeli. There we go.
Perfect. There you go. You got it. Perfect.
Marin Angeli. You got to put those two
Good
words
job.
together. All right, Laura, it has been a nothing but a pleasure, even though we've been talking about some unpleasurable things.
Yeah. Well, Hambone, the pleasure's been mine.
So, and you do have a blog? Do you?
Yeah.
I was checking in on it. Do you? I hope you're a little more prolific on your blog than mine. I maybe I can actually get some writing done once I get away from the Hollywood Hills. So, do you? Do you add to it regularly, or is it a sporadic?
It's funny. I used to do mostly essays on it, and a few of them were published. Zen Gardner published a few of them, and Dane published a few. But lately, I've been. I still do essays, but I've been doing a lot of songwriting and poetry lately. You know, all pertinent to our situation.
So where can we find your written work? What's the name of your blog? Give us a plug.
It's on WordPress, and it's called Marin Angelio, like Leo, as in a little homage to Leonardo da Vinci, one of my heroes.
I'll put the I'll put the link to it. Okay, well stick around for a minute, but I'm gonna wrap this up, and so guys, I hope you have enjoyed that conversation, and please, if you have any comments or questions for Laura, you can just send them comments to this video, and I'm sure she will see them and be able to respond to you personally. And other than that, we are going to call it a night on this beautiful night and say thank you very much, Laura, and we will hopefully check in with you in the future.
Well, thank you, Hambone.
All right, guys, we will be back tomorrow with our Clueless Moron Roundup rant after this taste of a non-clueless moron. So there you go. It's nice to balance out. But I will be back fresh and early tomorrow. Good Lord, it is midnight here on Friday night pretty much. Okay, bye guys. See you tomorrow.